Welcome to a basic introductory video of how to connect a Beckhoff IPC to an ignition gateway. So this is supposed to be a video considered as a little bit of an enhancement compared to the videos that are out there. There's great content out there, but in most cases the examples are when people are running the ignition Docker as well as the TwinCAT environment right on their PC. And there are some challenges with that, or when you do that in general. But everybody knows that in regular circumstances, if this would be a real world example, that we would be connecting to a plant network or another network that would host ignition, and then the Beckhoff IPC would be running in a control cabinet. So I wanted to kind of showcase this so other people have a little bit of an easier time going and implementing this. So first of all, obviously we are here on my host computer as a programming environment. It can connect to or is connected to the Beckhoff IPC. We need to connect, obviously, to our Beckhoff IPC by RDP. I think that is fairly straightforward in most cases. So I am going to use remote desktop client. I'm on a 192.168.12 static network, which I'm connecting to my Beckhoff IPC. And I'm going to say yes to this, and I have now connected to the Beckhoff IPC. Now, as far as OPC is concerned, there are a couple of ways that OPCUA has been implemented. One is obviously, you have PLC manufacturers like Allen Bradley, where the OPC server resides on the ignition side, where you don't have to do anything or not able to run an OPC server on an Allen Bradley PLC. In this case, Beckhoff is an IPC. So obviously there's a lot more configuration possibilities here. And on the Siemens environment, it's part of, I think, TIA Portal 14 or 15, where once you have the right firmware, the OPC server directly resides on it. There's not much you need to do, and you're able to expose the relevant tags to ignition, and then you can connect those and add it to your HMI or SCADA. For Beckhoff, it's a little bit different. You need to follow a couple more steps, and obviously you need a license to run OPC. So let's do that. Let's go. I'm on my IPC now. I have created a folder here called OPCUA, and there are a couple of programs or executables you need, which are available freely to download from the Beckhoff website. So I would recommend that you download all of these and install them on your Beckhoff IPC. In this way, you can run your OPC server and on your Beckhoff IPC. These are required. So one of the things which I'm not going to go into too much detail, I'll recommend you read some of the notes, is to how to create endpoints. I'll link what I believe to be the most relevant documentation under this video, so you have a easier time connecting the dots if this is the first time you're doing it. So obviously my IPC is running. I have one of the OPC gateway installed, and there is something called an OPCUA configurator, and there's something called a sample client. But the configurator, you create what's called an endpoint. An endpoint is pretty much, for layman's terms, like a URL, how you can actually connect to the IPC. In my case, I have a server here to which I can connect. Okay. But what is important to note is this is kind of the first time when you go through the process, you will go and create the server through the OPC configurator. So you have, in my case, obviously IP address here, .1.1. The ADS port has to be 851, which is standard for ADS. And you pretty much create your OPC server that way. So later we get to the point that we can actually see that that the OPC server is configured for our endpoints to work. Let me see. You can obviously, similar to any Beckhoff system, you can activate configurations, and let's go edit on this, and you can pretty much see what is our server URL. So our server URL, and don't be confused between the two that are represented here, in this case is localhost 4840. So what does that mean, right? Like for some people that might be a little bit confusing, specifically when they run into challenges. So right now we are on our IPC, so localhost 4840 means just we're looking at ourselves, right? That's all we're doing. And why this is kind of important is in the next step that you'll see later. This local host obviously changes when you start trying to access the endpoint from outside the IPC itself to look at your OPC tags. So obviously there is some security configurations you can do. There is a token security policy. I'm not going into detail because a lot of that is pretty much custom based on what you need. But pretty much, you can create endpoints. You can select different ways of encryption. You can add them. You can create servers, and you can connect in that way. So now we do have an already configured endpoint, which is, in my case, I configured it in such a way that it is obviously, it has to be the IP address of the OPC server. That is my net ID. And then that is what you'll see as exposed to the outside. So let's go and open a sample client, and I'll do this step twice and kind of explain why. So obviously we have OPC server running. If we go to get to endpoints, right, it's going to pull up my PLC or IPC with its project, and then the necessary certificates, and then I'm going to go and try to connect. Now it's going to ask me a username and password. This is something that you would have entered during configuration step. So I'm just going to enter my credentials here for my configuration. And when you hit OK, I'm going to see my objects. So this is when you know that you have actually been able to connect to your endpoint. And what does this mean, right? Like this means by ADS you're able to get connected to your actual IPC, and you're able to see your variables here. You're able to go here, and then you're able to click on them, and then that pretty much shows that they're available. These are all your PLC variables, and there's a bunch of other things that you can do. Now, there are different ways of doing this. Obviously, how much you expose is kind of up to you. For me, I I'm not a big fan of trying to constantly add variables and then activating, configuring. So I've kind of gone through the effort of exposing everything. One thing that's important, as you can see here, status code license expired means that my license is expired. Hence, I won't get a life value. But if you have the license activated and fairly reasonable from Beckhoff, you wouldn't see this, and you would get live status of the value. And so once you have pretty much, you can click on each one of these and then add them to be subscribed. Pretty much is the right term. Once you're able to do that, you pretty much can close out of this. This is just making sure, hey, my endpoints are accessible, right? We're still on our IPC. You haven't gone anywhere. We're still literally on our IPC seeing our own variables, which kind of seems, not great of an achievement maybe at that point, but at least you know that the OPC server is working. And as long as you can see those variables updating, assuming you have the right license, you can go ahead and go for it from there and know at least that this configuration is right. So I'm going to disconnect here from my IPC and then be back on my Windows machine, which I'm connecting to my IPC. Just go here to our license, and then just, as you see, you need the TF6100 license. I'm just going to go ahead, put this in config mode. All right, and then I am going to do a trial license. Hit OK. I'm going to activate. Sure, got some errors, but at least we got a license now. So give it a moment. All right, we are running. All right, so now let's go back to that sample client, which I would recommend to install on your host machine. The reason being, now we want to see, can we actually see our tags? Well, now the endpoint has changed, right? So now we are looking at our endpoint from the outside, not from within the IPC. So based on how you set up your endpoint, you're going to hit 192.168.12.157 in my case, and then hit up your port 4840, and then you're going to go ahead get endpoints. So why is this relevant? Well, this is relevant to see, can you see actually your variables from the outside? So we're going to connect. We connect, it's going to ask me for the same username and password that I entered earlier. And that is what I will do now. All right, as we see, we can see our objects going, right? We see our PLC. And once we are in your PLC, now let's look. Now that I've activated the license, let's see what does test input say. Nothing. well, it's saying it's good and the value is false, right? And I'll try to do another video if there's interest how to make all of these subscribable constantly. And pretty much, I think it was a setting that I'll try to find and I'll link here. So now that you know that you got your endpoints and they are running on your basic computer and you can see it, let's look and go to the ignition side of things. So what do we do? So we go and call our ignition bundle, which is a Docker image that is currently set up. And okay, so just coming back here on the ignition portion of it. So we are on a Docker image, right? For all intents and purposes, let's just consider that we are able to connect our server. There is no networking problem, and we are able to ping from the server all the way to your IPC. So that can be a different configuration, a network configuration. And if there are any questions, please feel free to write something in the comments section or contact me, and I'll try to answer to the best of my abilities. So here we are on our beautiful ignition setting, page and config page. There are gateway settings here that this is the standard Docker image that you can download, real-time tags, right? But let's look at OPC connections. And when we look at OPC connections, you can see earlier the PLC. And let's go, and I'm not going to go through too much detail how to set it up, because I think that covers a little bit more of ignition training. So if you don't know how to do it, please look at something. But just some videos, and it'll hopefully make sense. Or again, if you need help, feel free to ping me. So what you see right now is obviously here OPC TCP localhost. Don't type that in, obviously, because we're not on our localhost, right? So in our case, this would have been this is the case, right? This is how we would connect to the server. In your case, this could be a different IP, but pretty much what you're saying is go to your IPC and look at port 4840. And when you go there, you'll see there is already something in place, and then we go next. In this case, I'm not going to finish it. It's going to ask for the URL. In this case, it's saying it's not connectable for whatever reason. But in most cases, it'll ask you, okay, can I connect to this? You hit yes, next, and let's see. It is able to confirm, and let's say finish this. Now it's going to go and ask a bunch of things. So it pretty much showed me some errors, and I think that the reason is I already have it running. But you would go through this process. You would add your username that you also added on your OPC client side, on the sample client, to log in here. And as you could see, there were obviously some certificates that you need to select based on the connection type you have set up. So then you press create OPC connection, and if everything goes well, I'm going to get out of this because I already have a connection. you should see something here. And if you have done your configuration right, the status will be connected here. And it might be a little bit tricky. There was some back and forth when I initially tried to set it up. I'm not sure if it was a networking problem or just a general system resource problem. But if you go here and look at the endpoint, you can see it is 192.168.12.157.48.40, which is my configuration. So some videos show localhost, and that's where I got confused. The issue was obviously when you're running your entire environment on your laptop for demo purposes, yeah, it will be localhost, but obviously this is not a real life scenario. Hence, this is where you would put your endpoint in, which is your IP address plus URL in my case, or in your case, most likely. Port is very important because obviously that is the port with which you're going to be able to connect to the IPC. So make sure that port is available and open for you to access from your Ignition server. So let's look at this. I just opened the quick client. And then when you look, I can now browse my entire client in this case, or my server in this case, which means, oh, this is because I exposed all my variables. You'll obviously see everything that is that you have exposed. So that is going to be some of the conditions that you're going to set up. And then we're going to just go ahead and then open the designer. And I'm just going to go over basically just some regular tag testing, so you can see how you would put these in. And then should you have any questions, feel free to contact me, and I'm more than happy to share some information. So I'm obviously using, as you can see in the bottom bar, a Mac, but I'm just connecting to a different environment to showcase how you would be connecting to a server. All right, so maybe it's videos look cut out, but just format of different things. So let's say you're successfully connected and you have the ability to, oh, maybe one step that I would also recommend, and I think this is basic Ignition knowledge. So again, if this is not something that you're that familiar with, please do feel free to contact me, and I'll try to give you a hand or give you some information here. So in Ignition you always have to, this is version 8.1, so you have to pretty much do a default tag provider, right? Just so you know where all your tags are accumulating. I called it IPC OPC. Feel free to call it what your machine name is. And then you go over here and pretty much you can create folders. I think that's basic Ignition knowledge. And then what you can also do is, let's say, browse devices, right? And then it'll obviously give you here your OPC server. And the beauty of it is, if you've exposed the tag, you can pull it in, right? Now, there's some things to note. Obviously, there are issues with when it comes to enums. Enums obviously aren't an Ignition data type. So there's a couple of things to kind of keep in mind, but yeah, it's very basic ignition tag addition. So we can create a new tag, right? New standard tag. We'll do an OPC tag, right? We go to OPC, right? We'll call it, let's say, test tag, and then let's say value source OPC, right? Data type, let's do a bool, and then let's look at the source, right? OPC server. Well, we are going to select our OPC server. OPC item path. Well, in that case, since we have exposed it, and as you can see, when you go here, the folder structure is almost very similar to what you see in the sample client. We go here, and I think this is and we hit OK. And let's see where that tag came in. And we see it is, the test tag is running. Like, there is no broken tag. Value is obviously 0, right? And I just wanted to show you maybe a couple of parameter tags, how things would look like. I've created a little bit of a UDT here, and then you can pretty much show actual position, target position of a servo motor. You can things can be on and off, and you know, how would that look like? Well, you know, you can build faceplates and pretty much link everything, you know, everything that's kind of related to ignition, and the beauties of creating templates and using it like in any other PLC environment. So that's a basic overview of how to connect ignition to from a server side to a Beckhoff IPC. Should there be any questions, feel free to contact me either here, or I'll leave the contact information below. And happy connecting IPCs to ignition. Thank you, and have a good day.